Right, just to bring up some of the extra notes that I've made on this video in finishing off, I'm just going to skip through this very quickly. Right, Searle claims that in 1956 he flew one of these devices, and he said it was crude in comparison to today's devices. Now, if he could fly one in 1956 and it was considered crude, then there's no reason whatsoever he can't create one and fly one today. Okay? So, if he wants to convince people that he's telling the truth, that's all he needs to do, is to create one of these crude devices that will fly. And obviously we would like to see that under controlled conditions where we can see there's no wires attached, and we can see that there's nothing, because this is a self-powered device. This device flies itself, it self-powers, it doesn't require any outside power, so it doesn't need to be connected to any wires apart from to start it up. And once it's started, then it operates on its own. So if this is the claim, then we would like to see it. Okay, if we can't see it, then it's bullshit. Sorry to be blunt with that, but that's the bottom line. Okay, forget all this seg generator and forget all these magnetic bollocks. Yeah, they're trying to just flim flam you. Yeah, just like whoosh 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 whoosh. Now you don't know what we're talking about. It's all magnetism. I'm not interested in your magnetism. I'm not interested in your weirdness. I'm not interested in your physics. I'm not interested in your law of squares. You said you built discs that flew. You said you had hundreds of people watching. So build one and we'll watch it. And I guarantee you we will film it. Yeah. If you can't do that, yeah, then there's nothing there. It's just flim flam. Now, I do believe that Searle is doing this in order to gain credit for himself. He wishes to get money, and he wishes to do it without actually providing anything, because there is nothing. So what he wants is money for nothing. Okay, and I think that's a bit naughty. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Okay, I mean, that's my theory. Yes, you have to decide for yourself. But anyway, he says when he first created the unit, there was nothing in books or scientific formulas to allow me to design this object. That sounds false, because there were books on magnetism and there were scientific formulas. Searle says he had to rely on his dreams in order to create it. The point is that Searle just didn't know how to read, so he didn't understand books or formulas, and he pressed on with his devices, which were basically probably things that did catch fire, and that's the reason his house burnt down. And he was evicted from that house, is because he burnt the bloody house down because he didn't know what he was doing. Yeah, I just put that forward as a possibility, in credible sort of rational thinking. Apparently, he enlisted in the RAF in 1950, and then in 1952 he was back in civilian life. Okay, so that's 2 years in the Air Force. Okay. I'd like to know why he left within 2 years. What happened there? Okay, I mean, why did he leave? There'll be records of that. Okay, and why does Searle think it's okay to wear an RAF uniform when he spent so little time in the RAF? Why does he wear RAF uniforms? And why does he salute, do all this sort of business? Yeah, 2 years in the RAF. Sorry, just doesn't add up. Why is this guy doing this? This is odd behaviour. Very odd behaviour for somebody who only spent 2 years in the RAF. Okay, why is he using the title of professor? Okay, he said that he got his professorship, let me just scroll down, from an organisation in Germany. Here we go. It's called Urkund, and it's the German word for a charter, which then shows that he was a professor. It was an awarded honorary title, and it was for the subject of Professor of Mathematical Structures of Creation and Energy. I mean, is there such a thing? It was given from an organisation called the Alpen Academy, and I have not been able to find an organisation called the Alpen Academy online that gives out professorships. I've not been able to find it. So is this bullshit? Is this just a bullshit professorship? because we do know of a lot of people who do this sort of thing. So let's scroll back up. Right. It says that Searle was a foreman in charge of a 3-man research and development team at East Midlands Electricity Board. Now, I doubt very much that a man with no education, okay, would be a foreman in charge of research and development, okay? But somebody needs to look into that further. Okay, he was married to Doris Shirley Foster, who was born in 1935, so she would be age 76 now. They had 6 children. John Roy Robert Searle, Robert John Robert Searle, Roy John Robert Searle, Georgina Doris Caroline Searle, April Rosemary Christina Searle, Catherine Alexandra Christina Searle, Alexander Philip Christopher Searle. Ages from 57, 56, 52, 50, and the youngest being 44. They were born between 1954 and 1967, so there's going to be some of those are still alive. I think it would be interesting to track some of these down and ask them, what's the deal with your dad then? What exactly is going on there? Can you sort of enlighten us a little bit? Just for somebody to look into. The statement is made that magnetism is identical to light and believes it contains a number of spectrum types. Okay, that's not proven. There's no science behind that at all. Showing that you can take a magnetic step off winding from a set of spinning magnets is showing us nothing more than the normal electrical flow that one gets when you have a generator setup. This is what I was talking about earlier on, whereby if you have a winding coil and then you have a magnet in front of it, you turn the winding coil on, it moves the magnet out of the way. So basically when you do that with an AC current, you turn it off on, off on, off on, off on, and these magnetic coils are going to move the rollers around the edge, which is a known effect. There's nothing strange in it at all. So it's how a generator works. The only difference between Searle's generator and a normal generator is Searle's is not a fixed rotational arm. Okay, he's actually freed up the rotational arm to make the magnets act as their own bearings. Basically, I mean they're acting as a bearing inside rather than being a fixed rotor arm spinning around with the magnets on the end. He's actually taken the rotor arm out, and now they are just a set of bearings. So they're running around inside like you'd have bearings in a car. I mean, again, I don't see anything fantastic in that. Okay, it's said that the magnetic field is present when the seg unit is in motion, and that the rollers are held off the cylinder, so held off the outside of the cylinder, so held off by a magnetic force. But at the same time, the statement is made that the magnets are held tightly onto the cylinder so they cannot fly off, which is what I was talking about with centrifugal force. So both statements seem to contradict each other. The magnets are held off by a magnetic field, which means no friction, so they're actually not making contact, which is bollocks because I can see they're making contact. And at the same time, they are being held on, which means if they're held on, they can't be being pushed off. So this doesn't make sense. Anyway, the statement is made that there's an imprinted magnetic field. We've discussed that. He reckons that the frequency that was being used for the control of the UFOs that he created, his levity discs, was 1,200 cycles per second, and he repeats this 1,200 cycles. So he makes this very clear. That's a VLF frequency, which is a very low frequency, which requires at least a 10-kilometer aerial, and you need power in the order of megawatts in order to get this to radiate properly. Okay, this frequency use would not only be illegal, but it would just not be available for radio hams to attempt to use this because of the size of the aerials. It is used by the military because they use it to communicate with submarines, but it's not something that a ham would be able to do. It's not something that a ham would have the capacity to do, and if he reckons that he had teams of ham operators up and down the country all helping him, using 1,200 cycles per second. This means that they had hundreds of ham operators who all had 10-kilometer aerials up and down the country. I don't think so. and plus there's no mention made of the radio equipment that was inside the levity disc that would have been picking up the signals. How would it have picked them up with no aerial inside the craft? How would it pick them up? Anyway, we won't go into that one. Right, there are documents in the background of his room, and I saw one and I managed to read off it that it had a silly statement such as, "This is the material that will be required for Starship Ezekiel." Okay, now this is starting to sound like George Adamski and alien beings and contactees. Yeah, he claims he got a pilot's license at Blackbush Airport. I reckon that should be checked out whether he did get his pilot's license, because somebody who can't read and somebody who has no education is going to find it pretty bloody hard to pass their pilot's license. I give it to you. So I don't know what his educational abilities are, but if he says that he was uneducated, yeah, then he isn't going to pass his pilot's license. So I think somebody needs to check into that, and that would be very easy to do.